Okay, so in this last part of the lecture, let's continue to talk about a capital accumulation in more detail. Okay, the teaching of capital accumulation in traditional Chinese culture is in fact very similar to modern economic management. But further, traditional culture recognizes the other side of the coin of capital accumulation, which is saving. Well, I guess it goes without saying that, the action of accumulation is very similar to that of saving. But in reality, they are, operated in slightly different ways. The question that we want to ask is, which one is more important? Is it capital accumulation or saving? Capital accumulation is, more on the business management side. And there are many ways of capital acquisition. This includes storage of raw material, acquisition of machineries or training of soft skills. These are all capital accumulation because, as we said in the previous video, soft skills also produce wealth in the future. So it is indeed capital. But saving, on the other hand, is more on the attitude of life, the attitude side of life. It also takes place prior to capital accumulation, right? If we take a person as an example, if he or she is willing to acquire a tractor, right, or acquire a set of IT skills, well, what does he do? Well, he must first save some money to pay for it. Although this seems obvious, the more important side of saving is that in order to save resource and money, the person must take the pain to reduce his spending and eliminate certain costly habit. So that's why this makes saving slightly more difficult than capital accumulation, because it requires certain cultivation of personal conduct to a certain degree, while capital accumulation is very much a technical issue. The importance of saving is not only relevant to personal life, but also to the survival of families and countries. Confucius raised the relevance of saving to the level of country governance as follows. He said, to rule a country of 1,000 chariots, there must be reverent attention to business and sincerity, economy in expenditure and love for men, and the employment of the people at the proper seasons. So the number of chariots is simply a proxy of the size of the economy. So in his teaching, Confucius mentioned a few things supposed to be important for high-level governance, and this includes dedication, trust, control of expenditure, caring for the people and officials, and making sure that governmental work and public labor do not compete with agricultural work. Because, in the quote, it says employment of people at the proper season. That is, in fact, employing people to do public work. Okay. So the issue of saving and controlled expenditure is as important as other matters. But we have to ask the question why. We have to dig a bit deeper. So to explain the importance of saving, we can now refer to Xunzi's writing in the chapter of honor and disgrace in the book of Xunzi. If we, think about human habit, it is, I guess, safe to say that the majority of the people find the following things to their liking. Okay, let's say nice food, good-looking clothes, nice cars, and the big and comfortable houses, etc. From the previous lectures on consumption, we know that apart from fulfilling the basic survival need, these consumptions are mainly made to satisfy our senses, the five senses. These are recognized as human habit. But it is also human habit that people want to have enough wealth left over after consumptions are satisfied. from the beginning of the year towards the end of the year, most of the time we feel that our resources and disposable income are below our economic need. This feeling is fairly, similar among the majority of the people, regardless of the actual level of disposable income. It doesn't matter if you're rich or poor. We still feel, we don't have enough. And the feeling is also quite consistent through time. So, in Xunzi's own word, the consequence of this human habit is that in the living of a man, he keeps fowls, dogs, and pigs, and he keeps also oxen and sheep, but in his eating, he does not dare to have wine and meat. He has plenty of money and stores of grain, but in his dressing, he does not dare to have silk. He has the deposit of the most valuable things, but in his going, he does not dare to have carriage and horse. Well, what's the reason for that? Why would people refrain themselves from indulging in luxurious consumption, even if they could? We have, talked about the ethical reason in great depth during the previous lecture. Okay, so we know why would people refrain from consuming too much. But for a person who does not cultivate personal ethics in particular, he may still save money. Without considering the ethical reasons and just focus on the economic rationale, people save money and resources because of their expectation of potential disturbance of future income. And this is purely because of the thinking of long-term planning. This is clearly a good thing, and also a smart thing to do. Xunzi illustrated a number of ways through which people achieve sufficient savings and smoothen consumptions, including reducing expenditure and the control of personal desire. However, not everybody can do even that. And we have seen some people living a lavish life that they cannot keep up with. Living on credit, for example, has in fact become a widely observed phenomenon in modern society. I don't have the data for all the countries, but taking the US alone, according to a report by the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, total US credit card debt reached an all-time high of $870 billion at the end of 2018. The striking evidence from the survey data in 2018 showed that nearly 1 in 5, which is 20% of the respondents, were dependent on their credit cards to pay for basic living expenses. Half of the survey respondents had maxed out the credit card limit, and over 20% had planned to open a new one within the next 12 months. I don't think it takes a PhD in mathematics to understand the danger of this way of life. Given a typical 15% to 25% interest charge of credit card debt, any small shift in personal financial situation can quickly result in financial punishment. This is simply not a sustainable way of life. And of course, this happens not just in the US, but in every country. Now, we must be careful with the reasons of opening a credit card, right? For some people, they open credit cards in order to earn cash back, points, or travel rewards. We're not going to talk about these details. Also, some people may be between jobs, and there is no other way to satisfy basic living without a credit card. But there are a considerable number of people who open credit card for the wrong reasons. For example, a current credit card is maxed out, or because of higher credit limit offered by the new card. These are the wrong reasons to open credit cards. Apart from credit cards, there are also, unfortunately, many ways where people unnecessarily live beyond their means. According to Xunzi, people can be too short-sighted to be careful for their living or for the future. Xun Zi said, there is no surprise that these people cannot escape from cold and hunger. So we can see that, why Confucius mentioned saving when discussing the governance of a country. Okay, so it's quite a while ago, so you can review the video that we posted earlier. The reason that Confucius mentioned saving when discussing the governance of a country is that personal conduct and personal way of life is in fact the foundation of a nation. And it also forms the general philosophy of the population as a whole. So saving is not just a technical issue, but it is very much related to personal cultivation. I guess this is our point here, right? Ethics, saving is also an ethical concept. In the Canon of Changes, there is a chapter called 戒, which means abstinence. Okay, abstinence, control, restraint, economy, and saving. Okay, now at the beginning, it confirms that abstinence is the basis of progress and attainment. Without self-control over usage and keeping desire in check, there will be nothing that progress can base on. However, unreasonable restraint is also not very good. It's not good because severe abstinence will block the channels of progress and is simply not sustainable. Interestingly, the Canon of Changes shows the economic implication of this principle. It says, based on the principle of abstinence for the making of regulation, it will not injure the wealth nor hurt the people. So the action of saving is a precondition of economic progress, but it must be governed by the principle of the middle way, as we have mentioned time and time again. So this is an important principle, okay, in government's public spending. The government must manage its balance sheet to make sure that certain crucial areas of public welfare is supported. Things like infrastructure investment, healthcare, national security, etc. An overly tightened public spending policy will result in the damage to people's welfare. The government may have to cut spending on education and medical services, but this will have a lasting effect on the society and welfare in the long term. Well, we know that, how the government spend money is a very complex issue, and it is fundamental to consider what is most needed by the people, because you have limited resource and limited funding. Also, the government must consider the principle of abstinence at the individual level. And this leads to the debate between pure laissez-faire policy and regulation-driven policy. Assuming, that economic agents are completely rational, they must be able to form a reasonable expectation of the future and estimate the likelihood of future financial hardship with the best use of all public information available. So in doing so, economic agents take actions to avoid potential disruption in their consumption pattern by saving their resources during good times and maintain a reasonable level of consumption in a bad time. However, evidence from financial crisis has shown that economic agents are far from rational. And many people had very little saving against their mortgage borrowing. And it was all based on the unrealistic expectations of ever-increasing house prices. So they're not rational. Of course, it's impossible, to expect everybody to be financially mindful. After all, not even the economists were able to predict the financial crisis with any degree of accuracy. Therefore, it is the responsibility of the government to teach people the principle of abstinence of spending. And this personal finance education is not a way to persuade people about the austerity budget policy, but simply to give people the knowledge to safeguard their own life. So all in all, saving is both an economic issue and an ethical issue. And education in this area is needed to ensure a stable and prosperous life for people. Thank you.